switch now and focus on the men's championship race, and equally as good a field as we saw on the women's side. 19 of the top 30 teams of the country are here on the men's side, including the top 3 ranked teams in BYU, Stanford, and NAU. You see their current standings, and Tulsa there in the number 5 position overall, the host school from Wisconsin. Colorado, Syracuse, North Carolina, everybody basically in the top 10 is here. 8 of the top 10 teams in the country, along with Iowa State there in 11th. As you look at some of the individuals here, a lot of excitement for what we expect to be a very competitive field on the men's side. The likes of Charles Hicks of Stanford, Casey Klinger, standout. He was another kid who ran very well in the high school days. A couple of NXN wins for him. And then Nico Young, obviously Northern Arizona, bringing Drew Bosley and a host of options. We'll see who they end up putting out on the field. You look down at the rest of the top individual placers from last year. Kai Robinson, expecting him being back in a race here in Nuttycombe. Aaron Bienenfeld, the standout from Germany, representing the University of Oregon. And Harvard, well represented, Air Force. I mean, it's everybody who you want to see in kind of a pre-championship caliber race. And they're all getting set here for racing here as we'll get this race started here shortly. Based on what you saw on the women's race, would you expect the men's race to kind of play out the same way, where some of the top teams will try to control the pace early on, or could we see something a little bit different?
I think we could see something a little bit different. I think we could see a little bit of a quicker race up front earlier on, but we'll just have to see. You know, I'm very excited to see which team takes this title today, what individual takes this title today. But remember, this is still like a fact-gathering mission for all these teams. They're going to learn a lot today. They're going to be able to take that back home and really learn from this so that they're better prepared for that championship.
Well, dating back to the very first Nuttycombe in 2009, 5 teams have won here and then gone on to win the NCAAs. Wisconsin did it in 2011, Syracuse in 2015, and NAU did it 3 straight times in 16, 17, and 18. NAU likes running in Madison, Wisconsin. This is their first trip since 2019. When they won that year, they have won the last 4 times they have competed, so perhaps a rather big chip on their shoulders. We begin to work our way down these boxes. Pick your favorite singlet, favorite squad. A lot of the top collegiate teams in the country are here. 19 of the top 30, 35 men teams in total. Florida State, Iowa State, the top-ranked team in the country, BYU. Only 7 runners from each of these assembled teams are in those boxes. The top 5 coming across the line will earn their point values, and we'll see if this team race comes down to a similar fashion that we saw on the women's side. Again, if you're just joining us, NC State and New Mexico equal on total points with 80 apiece in that women's championship race, but the head-to-head tiebreaker giving NC State the win. See that red flag behind, reflecting the wins that these athletes will be seeing in these straightaway portions, both at the start of the race and then at the finish, which happens in parallel to where they are starting, sort of to the right of your screen. But the starter now in his defined position. Gun is up. Racing underway in Madison, Wisconsin. It is the men's championship race at the 2022 Nuttycombe, Wisconsin Invitational.
Well, Paul, we've seen it 4 times now, but that guy starting the gun is pretty brave to just stand there as everyone goes barreling out towards him. I guess the athletes are smart. They know to move around him, but I'm not sure I'd want that position. But here we go. I love this site.
I just have visions of Kevin Bacon in Animal House just having everyone remain calm. All is well.
Totally. Here we go. They are out hard and quick, and I think that part of that is positioning, as we've seen in the other races, especially the men's B race and the women's championship race. It is packed in tight in those first few kilometers, and people want to have a little breathing room, maybe go out a little bit harder than they normally would, just that they have a little bit positioning. But that all goes into strategy. Is it worth it, or is it better to just sit back and ride that train for a while? We will see.
Men ran Men run 8,000 meters, 2,000 meters longer than the women's race today. They use a different course layout as well, taking full advantage of kind of the outer ring of this Thomas Zimmer Championship. So they will see a little bit of downhill here early on and then take their first climb just before the first kilometer is complete. And this is all about finding solid footing in the early going. Temperatures in the mid to upper 40s now. Started on a cool day in Madison. As Kara Gauscher would describe, authentic cross-country weather here for this squad that will work their way around this Zimmer course over 8,000 meters during that kilometer part. So we'll watch them take their first climb here momentarily.
And they are out, Paul. They're using every inch of that course. They're spread across the entire freeway there. So they're running. And everybody that's not in those first two lines needs to stay calm and know that there's still a lot of running left, but they are taking advantage of every inch of that course.
See Michael Power of Tulsa, the tallest of the figures in the front of the pack. He's bib number 395, the senior for Tulsa. And the contingent from Villanova also represented out well in the front. Liam Murphy, the sophomore. As they make their very first climb. You see the Villanova Wildcats squad numbering total of 7 athletes on this list are actually in this field. And again, it's one of the challenges with calling these races. We don't know necessarily who is in this race because they weren't necessarily declared until they put them in the box. So there were a couple of notables like Colin Salmon from NAU that we were waiting to see if they would be in the field. We'll certainly know who's in the race here shortly because when they cross the 2,000 meter mark, they'll cross the first timing mat, and then we'll be able to populate those current results, and that will remove any not knowing who's running today.
Right. And someone might ask, why wouldn't you run your best team? But maybe someone has a little injury. Maybe someone's coming down with the cold. Maybe you want to protect an athlete that's coming up and through. You don't want to race them yet because you're not sure if they're going to make varsity or not this year. So there's lots of reasons why a coach would take an athlete out and not run them. But as for us trying to call the race, it's a little bit challenging because we don't know everybody that's in the field. But as you said, around that 2K mark, we will start getting individual times and places popping up, and we'll have a better idea of just who is out there representing their schools today.
Do see a trio of Stanford Cardinal, screen left, 365. That's Kai Robinson making an appearance on a race course here for the Cardinal this year. The sophomore, Cole Sprout, also a talented sophomore. So Stanford loaded with a lot of talent. Robinson, who also qualified for the World Championships last year at 5,000 meters as one of the international athletes in the field. Charles Hicks was 14th for Stanford at last year's NCAA Championships, also up near the front.
And again, Paul, we see them using every inch of that course, spreading out, trying to get room, trying to give each other a little bit of space, that they're not elbowing each other. But this is quite the sight, seeing all of these men packed in here together. You don't get to see this on the track. You don't get to see this in an elite marathon. That's one of the things about cross country that I love. It has so many different elements that make it challenging, and that's just one of them.
And those forested areas also makes it a little bit challenging to get that perfect clean picture. But when they emerge from those tree-lined part of the route, they'll come down this hill, and then we'll quickly see them cross the very first timing mat of the day and begin to populate the current standings in this race. Again, 8,000 meters the distance for the men in this championship race. Ahmed Ibrahim of Boise State, the sophomore, bib number 22, out there as part of the lead group along with his teammate Austin Apperson. Jonathan Shields also for Boise State running among the top 5, and now we begin to see that real-time reorganization of the team standings. Very early on, just 25% of the race concluded, but you can start to say, maybe make some early inferences about who might be in a good position to race well today. Yassine Germali of Gonzaga. We featured a DiStat discussion with him earlier on this week. He's now in 6th, just ahead of Cole Sprout.
This is for these men. They have to be patient. There's so much running to do. Sure, if you're hoping to win this, you want to be near the front. You don't want to have to move around and make up a ton of room. But you still have almost 6 kilometers, almost the entire women's race to run yet. So you have to be really patient of when to move forward and when to sit back. There's a lot of running to be done. And a lot of times we see people that are in the back, we barely notice them, that will move up over those final 2 kilometers because they just had a little bit more patience.
Well, I was looking quickly down some of the standings here just to kind of eyeball some of the folks we were waiting to see if they were going to run today. Kai Robinson was one of them. We figured he would be in the field. Colin Solomon of Northern Arizona, the freshman, is in the race. He came through the bib at 158th position, which actually isn't that far. In fact, there's only 5 seconds off the lead. Kind of shows how deep this pack is. You go down almost, 7 seconds between number 1 and number 200 through the first 2,000 meters.
Yeah, this is a big pack of people moving through. People are strategizing now, trying to decide when to go, when not to go, and seeing how long they can ride it out.
So Kai Robinson bid 365. Now ahead of the field. Stanford running very strongly there with 3 at the front. Aaron Bienenfeld of Oregon bid 311, has now moved to front, coming off that confident win for him at the host Bill Dellinger Invitational. As racing continues on the track, or on the field here in Wisconsin. So through that 2,000 meter split, Boise State with 120 points very early on here. You see lurking there in the shadows back in 15th place is Northern Arizona, who comes in ranked number 3 in the country. Stanford is open with the top 3 here in this race. As Kai Robinson moving confidently, Cole Sprout there, 367 in second position. So tight through those first 2,000 meters, awaiting their next trip past the timing apron at 4,000 meters. But maybe things starting to decompress just a bit. Now 10 minutes into the race here at Zimmer Championship Cross Country Course. Again, it will be the site of the NCAA Championships in the fall of 2024. See another Stanford singlet emerging. Devin Hart, the sophomore, 362, has moved up well. So Stanford's team so far looking very strong in the early going here with the leader, Robinson. And NAU, you see Nico Young maybe for the first time emerging. Bib number 298. So 11 minutes into the race and nearing the 4K mark. Stanford now 1, 2, and 3. Bidenfeld of Oregon behind them in 4th, and Nico Young in 5th. See the spread for Stanford at 141 points, with Thomas Boyden, their 5th place runner, back in 72nd position. But here comes the mat at 4,000 meters as we near the 12-minute mark, and Robinson, Hicks 1 and 2, Bosley is in 3rd, Nico Young in 4th. So Stanford 1, 2, 5. Northern Arizona 3rd and 4th. Acer Iverson, the standout junior from Harvard, back in 6th position as we've reached the halfway mark. And Kara, so far, Stanford very strong at the front, but as we start to add up the team totals, you see Northern Arizona with the slight advantage, just as we saw with that women's race. Maybe it doesn't matter necessarily where your top runners are, it's where 4th and 5th stand that makes the difference.
Absolutely. I mean, we see a lot of Stanford uniforms right now. I think they're running pretty tightly as a group, but we have watched NIU sort of move their way through this field and work their way up. We didn't see them at the beginning of the race. They were sort of sitting back a little bit, letting someone break the wind, but we've really seen them weave through now and find themselves up front.
You see Boyden back there in 52nd, but you know, in fairness, that's still only about 4 seconds back of the leader. You look behind, though, people are starting to try to find room to move around, and that's often the challenge with these tight packs is, you know, in some of these narrow portions of the course, there's just not a lot of room to get around people.
There isn't a lot of room. We see people moving out here. If you're looking at the screen on the left of the screen, kind of moving out so they can move up a couple rows of people and then try to slide back in a little bit. That's part of the strategy. Do you go to the front right away and not risk being boxed in, or do you have faith that you'll be able to find room and come through later on in the race?
Good crowd assembled here along the course, finding opportunities to cheer on the athletes, and then they'll skirt across to another portion of the race. There is Nico Young now moving into center of picture. Bib number 298, another outstanding young high school phenom from Newberry Park High School, of course, in California. The NXN champ back in 2019, finished 11th in the cross-country championships last year, 3rd on the track at 5,000 meters. NAU with an abundance of riches on their roster.
Absolutely. They have such a deep field, and it's been fun to see Nico Young, much like Caitlin Tuib. A lot of eyeballs on him, people expecting big things from him, and he's developing nicely. He also has brothers that are extremely good as well, so it's a very talented family for sure.
5 kilometers in now for the leaders. And in this men's race, kind of a flat portion of the race, they'll do a little bit of a downhill as they come through 6 kilometers and down, and then the final climb up through 7 kilometers. So expect to see some competitive decisions being made here over the next kilometer or so of this race, setting the stage for the final 2. Nico Young now alongside Charles Hicks challenging for the lead. Andrew Bosley in the NAU singlet 281 up there in front as well. Cole Sprout just behind him on the left side of your screen.
And we see Stanford still with so many athletes in front. You know, they really made a decision to go to the front early on and try to control this race, and they've done that well, but we have seen now NAU move through this field and starting to move up. Now we see 2 NAU athletes. It looks as if they're sort of controlling this effort at this point.
And it's hard to put yourself in the mind of a coach, obviously, but you know, you don't necessarily want to reveal a strategy you might use in a race when it matters the most, which would be the NCAA championship. So would you expect some coaches maybe to kind of be trying some different things with their team and instructions for this race, or is it still at the end of the day, we want to come here and try to win the thing?
Well, I think they want to try to come and win, but they also do want to keep a couple tricks up their sleeve. Stanford and NAU couldn't train in different environments. NAU is up high in Flagstaff. So at the national championship, when it's 10,000 meters, those later stages, that altitude training is going to help them. But then you look at a team like Stanford, and they're able to do more speed. They're down at sea level in the sunshine, warm weather. And so you really want to coach to the environment your team trains in, the skill level you have on your team, the talent you have. And I think most coaches would love to win today. I think it sends a pretty good, strong message. But at the same time, I think everyone knows that this is not the NCAA championship. And while everyone wants to win bragging rights and learn a lot about each other as competitors, they're still hoping to gain more over the next few weeks as they train towards the championship.
Well, coming up on the 6,000 meter split, and I just noticed for the first time a few of those Cougar singlets from BYU. They come in as the top team in the country, and I didn't see a lot of them figuring prominently in some of those early splits, but not how you start, it's how you finish. Bib 47, that's Davin Thompson, the sophomore. Aiden Troutner behind him wearing bib number 48. So they've moved up prominently. Creed Thompson of BYU also there on the left side of your screen. And look at what difference that makes as the Cougars now emerging, at least early on here, with the lead at 6,000 meters.
And again, these altitude teams tend to move through the field later on in the race. They don't go out super hard. They don't have the sharpness necessarily that some of the other teams have, but they have that strength that really comes through in the final 2 kilometers. And I think that's what we're seeing from BYU right now, really moving through and looking comfortable in these later stages.
Yeah, you look at BYU and how they've amassed those 13 points. The spread, 1.5, just 3rd to 16th, so they've really compacted them very nicely. Stanford, who has places 4, 5, and 7, have runners 4 and 5 in 18th and 39th place, and that is making all the difference, though. You do see that Rousseau has moved up 45 spots, so we'll keep an eye on his performance here over the final 2 kilometers. Northern Arizona, buoyed by the strong performance up in front by Nico Young and Drew Bosley. Then you see Prosser, Couchet, and Colin Solomon, the freshman, trying to move up. He's moved up 11 spots between the last split at 4 to 6,000. They need to see some movement there on the back end to figure prominently into this team race here over the last stage. Now into the climb here, Karen. We've seen that's where Caitlin Toohey tried to make her move to try to blast open, but right now Nico Young not being able to shake the rest of this field as Charles Hicks stays with them.
In these later stages, you want, when you go up those hills, to what we call equal effort. You don't want to have to dig deeper to get up there. You want to be able to keep that effort and float up and over those and take advantage as you crest then. Those hills, the longer the race goes, the more you feel it, the more you're like, woo, I'm digging for this. And so you want to save as much energy as possible so that you can really stay in control up and over those hills later in the race.
Well, and how about Bob Liking? He's now fixtured prominently in this race, 491 on the home course for Wisconsin, would like nothing more to have the crowd behind him going toe-to-toe with some of the best athletes in the country here as they really began to break loose that tight pack. As the lead group now down to looks like 6 or maybe 7 in this top group with about a kilometer to go.
Yeah, we saw him move out on the outside about halfway through. He started to make his move, moving up and up. So now he is controlling this race right now, and he knows this course better than anyone. He trains here. He knows this. So he knows when he wants to make a move, where he wants to make it. And he moved up slowly. Like I was saying, oh, look at these people on the outside moving up. And he was the person I was looking at, moving up on that outside, finding room. And now he finds himself in the lead pack and actually slightly controlling this race.
Caught a glimpse of Acer Iverson of Harvard, who's trying to close the gap. He's kind of there in no man's land behind that lead group. But working our way into the final stretches of this championship men's race, the 2022 Nuttycombe Wisconsin Invitational. as liking the hometown favorite, trying to break up this Stanford trio, and the pair from NAU figuring prominently in the overall team race. As Charles Hicks on the left of your screen, Kai Robinson 365 to the right, Nico Young still in the mix, liking, as now maybe that group dwindling to 4 here as they'll come down that final crest of a hill and will begin to turn their attention to the final sweep to the finish.
And as they come down here, they're hoping that they still have enough left, that their legs aren't rubber on this downhill part, that they're feeling their footing, that they're feeling that contact with the ground, but they still have more to give. At the end of a race like that, it can be tough when your legs get tired, but I think this top 4 now, as you said, has pulled away now and has established themselves as these are the 4 that are going to be fighting for that individual win.
Well, Hicks is the reigning Pac-12 cross-country champion from a year ago, 6-time All-American, finished 6th on the track at 10,000 meters, also picked up the Pac-12 championship on the track in that event. And back in the March edition of NCAA championship racing a year ago was a 14th place finisher, but now he's going to try to have to hold off Nico Young, the sophomore from Northern Arizona, trying to grind it out as they make the turn for home.
And Nico Young really went to the arms there. It was almost like he was holding back in those final stages before he could really let loose. And this is going to be close here. They're all fighting and really going to that sprint form in this final stage here.
And it looks like Young is now in the lead. And Charles Hicks trying to do battle here as well. You can cover the move of one Stanford Cardinal, but can you cover the move of both of them? There's Kai Robinson and Young. And Kai Robinson across the line ahead of Nico Young to win the Nuttycombe Invitational, 23:09.9, as he holds off Young by 0.2 of a second. Stanford goes 1 and 3 at the front.
Well, that was really impressive out of Robinson and Hicks. They were in the front the whole time. No one was, blocking the win for them, and they still both were able to find form to kick at the end and to move up at the end. A really good race out of both of them. And also Nico Young really learning himself as a collegiate athlete, kind of coming into his form as we saw with Caitlin Tui, really learning to trust himself and to realize, talent doesn't go away. You're just at a bigger stage. It was an exciting race for those top 4 right there.
Well, things looking pretty good for Stanford right now as we work our way through the final tally of scoring. The difference right now at 35 points with BYU. Northern Arizona back there in a battle with Air Force for 4th. Notre Dame back in 5th. The host school from Wisconsin in 6th. But still unofficial results. As you see Stanford amassing those 54 points below with Robinson, Hicks, and Sprout all in the top 7. Hart, and then a move. Again, we said keep an eye on Baudouin Rousseau, who moved up in the latter stages of the race, winds up in 30th. And BYU, look at that spread by BYU. It's actually a solid spread, but needed that spread to be like 10 spots higher.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe that's what BYU will take home with them. They needed to move a little bit earlier in the race. Maybe they shouldn't have waited quite so long. They obviously ran together great as a team and as a pack. 2.5 seconds is, I don't think I've ever even heard of a spread that's small. But they'll take that back. They'll say, hey, maybe we should have moved a little bit earlier. Or maybe they'll say, hey, that was perfect. Give us 2 more kilometers where we run 10 kilometers at the national championships, and that'll be enough to put us up front of Stanford.
Well, as we said at the outset of this race, 5 teams have won here at Nuttycombe and gone on to win an NCAA title in the same year. The last men's team to do it was NAU back in 2018. And this first time Northern Arizona has not come to Madison and taken home a victory, as that victory now belongs to the Stanford Cardinal. Hope to hear from Kai Robinson with Mike J here in a moment as we get the rest of the group across the line. This great finishing arch, which used to stand at Camp Randall Stadium on the campus of the University of Wisconsin. Some of these final few runners gutting it out on this day just to try to get over the finish line. And Carrie, you've been there before. It's tough to watch, but you're also incredibly admire the effort to finish.
Absolutely. Sometimes your body just rebels on you. We saw this with someone from Oregon a couple years ago. I'm blanking on his name right now, but Cooper Tier, yes, but he just kept going up and walking. It's scary and hard to watch. But those athletes, they want to finish. They want to get to that finish line and do what they came there to do, which is finish the best they can for their teammates. So it's always scary to see that. You know, someone was out a little bit too hard or wasn't nourished quite enough. But it happens. It happens. You see it a bit.